Every student is unique. Every student learns differently, and every student matters.
This is Idea Exchange, the Future of K-12 Education series, brought to you by McMillan Paston Smith Architecture.
Welcome to the Future of K-12 Education, Summer School Sessions.
This is Ben Thompson with the Idea Exchange, the Future of K-12 Education podcast. It's a pleasure to be with you again for this next summer school series. I've asked a colleague of mine, Michelle Smith, the K-12 sector leader in our Charleston office, to join this important series of podcasts. Michelle has worked in K-12 education and higher education for projects and clients over the last 20 years. She is a highly experienced designer and a thoughtful advocate for providing the best environments for students, teachers, and the communities they serve. And she's also a friend. Michelle and I were classmates in college, and I'm glad that she has joined this exchange of ideas in education. You'll be pleased to meet her as well.
Hi, I'm Michelle Smith. I'm an architect with McMillan Paston Smith Architecture, based out of the Charleston office, and I help lead the education studio in that office.
Planning to open a new school can be an exciting and daunting task. It takes community buy-in, an experienced team, and plenty of stakeholder communication. In this episode, we dive into the details of opening Lucy Beckham High School in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, in the middle of a pandemic, no less. What were the strategies used to ensure first-year success, and what went into the design and planning of this new school to serve its student population? And where better to get these answers than the school itself? That's right, we actually took our podcast on the road and are coming to you live from a room inside Lucy Beckham High School, a school I happen to know since my team designed it. Join us for an exciting episode. Today, I'm joined by the principal of Lucy Beckham High School, Anna Dassing. She has worked for Charleston County Schools since 2002. Before being named the principal of this new high school, Ms. Dassing was the principal at Burke High School. She is also a former principal of Moultrie Middle School and worked as director of college and career readiness there prior to her time at Burke. Ms. Dassing began her career in the Low Country as a teacher specialist at Military Magnet, then later worked in the district office and went on to serve as assistant principal at Stall High School. Anna, welcome. So glad you could join us and open your doors to our production to actually produce our podcast from here. What a great opportunity. We're so excited to talk with you today. I wanted to invite you to talk with us today about Beckham High School and the process of planning the school and your last year of opening this high school, because this past year was the very first year the high school was open. So I also wanted to check in with you to ask how the past year has been.
Okay.
Tell us how it's been with COVID.
Needless to say, opening a new high school is, it's really a dream come true for me. And having been a part of this process since I was principal at the middle school and part of the planning team, and then actually seeing it come to fruition, I felt like for years and years and years, it was like 2020, 2020, 2020, you know, that was going to be our big day. And then boom, COVID hit. And I think it threw everybody for a loop. But at the same time, we were bound and determined that we were not going to let this slow us down. It was going to cause us to do things differently, but we weren't going to let it stop us.
Right.
We were really lucky because we were only opening with 9th and 10th grade. So we had half the number of students. And so we were able to roll students in even more slowly than we would have already rolled them in. But all in all, it was extremely challenging, but absolutely the worst year in education, the best year I've ever had.
I'm so glad to hear that. It does. I'm so glad to hear that. Did you see the numbers of students increasing as the school year went on, or how did that go?
So what we did is of course, we only had 9th and 10th grade to begin with. So we had about 750 students enrolled. The district allowed us to bring back a certain percentage. So we started with about 150 students, which was like a ghost town. We were like, wow, where are all the kids? But it was difficult too, because all the rest of the students that weren't in person were virtual.
Right.
So our teachers were learning how to teach simultaneously.
Adapt on the fly.
Exactly,
yeah.
100%. And learn to do asynchronous and synchronous education at the same time. Some kids in front, some kids on screen. And then every week we were adding more students in person.
Right.
So a teacher may have 10 students in person this week. Next week, they may have had 12 or 15. We had some families that opted to not come back at all. Or to remain in the virtual setting. They didn't want to come back in person. So it was on top of opening a new building with a brand new staff and a brand new group of kids, we were constantly adapting to everything that was going on.
Right. I imagine you would have to. You were just forced into that position of change and being flexible and being resilient. And at the same time, you were developing your school culture.
Yes.
So you have all of these other ancillary school programs that you were launching as, in addition to just bringing students back to the classroom in person or virtually. So how was that? How was that process, starting these extracurricular clubs and your sports teams? And I follow the school on Instagram a lot, so I love to see updates. But can you talk a little bit about how that happened?
Well, one of the things, again, our primary focus this year was building the culture and the climate. And I think even with COVID, COVID gave us a additional reason to make it even better. It was like it was this huge constraint that we had, but it proved to us and our community that we were resilient. They didn't know us. They didn't know if we could handle this or what this was going to look like. So despite the fact that we were opening in the middle of a pandemic, we had enormous community buy-in. We did celebratory games. We had a socially distanced pep rally. We were constantly trying to celebrate and really
remain positive.
Just move forward. Yes, we got COVID. No, I don't like plexiglass. But we've
you were using
what's the best we can do.
Right. It sounded like you were using a common cause to unite the culture here, the student population and the staff and the community. That's wonderful. It's really challenging to do that and to do that daily, on a day-to-day basis. So how did you support your staff and your teachers during that? Because I can imagine it being It was very
difficult. And as I mentioned earlier, I've had teachers say that this was their worst year teaching, but it was their best year ever because they were in a building. One, it's a gorgeous new building, wonderful new facility, but we came together as a family and it's really as a unit and a team. And when things got hard, they leaned on each other. Our staff is not in silos. They work together. You walk down the hall and on planning periods, teachers are huddled up working on, lessons or helping one another. There was a constant camaraderie and collaboration that was created that we can do this. We can do anything. We celebrated together. We have huddles in the atrium just for silly stuff, for fun stuff, birthdays, weddings, babies. We had an Easter egg hunt.
Costume
that kind
things.
of stuff. Costume things were constant.
Oh,
yes, the spirit weeks with the kids. Yeah.
Right.
So we just really focused on staying positive and controlling what we could control because COVID was obviously not something that we could control. So it was not within our realm of influence. It was certainly part of our concern, but we controlled what we could control.
And how you reacted to that. One of the posts that I loved seeing shared in social media was a staff development day, a professional development day where the staff, I think you probably brought in Chick-fil-A for all the staff members. And then I think y'all had a yoga session in the gymnasium.
Yes.
So for me as a designer, I love to see how the school has been utilized in many different ways, not only for that, but all of the collaboration spaces. So
that is actually, it was a total lifesaver. It was something that I don't think we ever realized. And one of the things that you and I have talked about over and over again is, really creating a space that it's what our students are going to be going into, whether it's a workspace or a college space or whatever it happens to be. Schools can't look like they've always looked. And we really have to think forward and really be bold and innovative. And I think by having the collaborative spaces and having the flexible use spaces, we had no idea that we would have cheerleading practice in the
student lobby.
Yeah, exactly. Or, for example, we have our cross-country team uses the main atrium to run drills up and down the stairs.
Oh, wow.
And it's just not something that you would have thought of, but it works beautifully. And so one of the things that I think we've done a really good job of is we use the whole space.
Right.
Lunch, a lot of times people think go to the cafeteria. You have to stay in the cafeteria. Our students are in the cafeteria like 5 minutes. They grab their food and they go to all over the building.
You still have one lunch period, is that right? And it's a dispersed lunch period.
Yes. Well, this last year, because of COVID, we had to go to 2 lunch periods just to kind of space the kiddos out. But this year we'll have one lunch. And so everybody will get their food as we're going to stagger when they go into the cafeteria, but then they can go all over the building, the courtyard, the atriums. They can go to teachers' classrooms for tutoring, extra help, whatever it happens to be, down to the gym to play basketball. Just really, again, utilizing the whole space.
The whole space. And I think part of the success of that is having enough collaboration and open spaces for students to congregate, unscripted spaces, but spaces that allow for those opportunities to happen, group study and just meeting with friends and working on, studying during your lunch break. But with that comes the notion of security. So we would do this, but we would also ensure that the building is secure. Do you still feel like the building is secure and the campus is secure the way it has been laid out?
So one of the things, yes, totally, the campus has been amazing, especially our courtyard. That has become kind of the hub of everything, and it's completely secured, and students can get into the building or out of the building depending on what the need is. But as far as like the rest of the building, one, we have a wonderful camera system. So I can actually see, I can almost see what they're doing on their Snapchat. The cameras are so good. So that's a good thing. But we also have developed what we call zones. So we have study zones, collaborative zones, and social zones that students will have, so that if a student wants to just hang out with their friends, we know they're going to be in a green zone. If they're studying by themselves, we know they're probably going to be in a red zone. So we're kind of going to be reteaching that to students this year. But the spaces all have staff around them. So if a student or a student group of students is working at one of the high tops, there are 4 classes right there. Teachers are watching. They see what's going on. We also have bingo guides, student concern specialist folks that are traveling around the building, helping students, make sure they're where they're supposed to be. We certainly have found the nooks and crannies, and we've added a few cameras here or there to help us be able to monitor those spaces. But we also are a staff that's out and about. We try not to be in offices. We're out with the kids. The students will come and tell us if something's, like there's somebody in the bathroom, it's been in there for a really long time. It sounds like this person's upset. We have a number of guidance counselors, that kind of thing. So, yeah, lots and lots of layers of security.
That's great. You are in terms of all of these spaces that we've been talking about, the collaboration spaces, the common spaces, you had the opportunity during the design process to be very involved in the furniture selection, which I think goes a long way to support these spaces. I mean, as an architect, we can only provide the vision and the shell of the room, but it really takes the furniture to support the function and the use of the actual space. So can you talk a little bit about that process and how important it was to executing
critical,
the school?
And I think so many times we tend to fall, or in education, we tend to do things the same way over and over again because that's kind of the way it's been done, So one of the things that we did that I found particularly helpful was to go out and look at different spaces, to look at college spaces, to look at, like when we went up to Blackbaud and Benefit Focus and all these different spaces, to be able to say office spaces, to be able to look and see. And the other thing I think we have embraced as a system is the fact that there are human beings using these spaces, and we can't just shove them into a desk and expect them to sit there for 4 90-minute blocks. They need to be able to move. Teachers, as a teacher myself, I love to rearrange my classroom. I was constantly moving stuff. So they laughed at me when I said I wanted everything on wheels, and now everybody is thrilled that everything is on wheels.
You did say that,
except for the stools in the hall. Maybe they have stool races back and forth down the hall. But just being able to flex those spaces this year will be even better because their plexiglass has been removed. We don't have to worry about that as much. So the space and the furniture that we chose was intended to be moved. It's intended to change. Depending on what the teacher, is going to be doing. If they're giving a test, it might be in rows. But if they're doing a Socratic seminar, it can't be in rows. The other thing that I've really been thrilled is the teachers utilize the common spaces. So it's very common to see a teacher take the class out into the hall to do some sort of activity. We don't have lockers, so we have nice wide halls, or to the common spaces or to the courtyard. I had to actually tell people you can only use the chalk on the sidewalk. You can't use the chalk on the wall.
Building.
I saw algebraic equations written on the side of the building, which was good, but they never came off. So we had to kind of adjust that a little bit. But truly making every space a learning space,
Right.
I think was really important,
great.
and it worked.
Yeah, that's great. I love to hear that. I love to hear that. That's wonderful. Let's go into a little bit more about the planning.
Okay.
From the very beginning, because you said something there that you did in researching the furniture. And I remember touring with you the office spaces. Early on, we also did some touring during the planning of the facility. And when this high school was kicked off planning-wise in 2015. So
It's hard to believe.
I know, 6 years ago. In which time you can educate a student in high school,
Exactly.
right?
All the way through.
That's right. That's how long it takes to get through high school, longer. But we started with a large stakeholder group that included many different diverse members of the community. We had district administration involved. We had the town of Mount Pleasant council members involved. We had the larger school district board members involved. And we also had Wando administrators involved. So it was an interesting project because the site of Lucy Beckham is the site of the old Wando High School. And Wando received a new building many years ago. And so the decision was made to demolish the old high school and build Beckham in its place. So there's some storied history there. But can we let's talk about from the beginning what it took to bring that community together to support two high schools.
Right. Well, one of the things that I think Lucy was a visionary, and I don't think anybody who knew her or worked with her would have ever imagined her to be anything other than a visionary. And so she was always looking forward and always saying, what are the next steps? I've got to be ready. We can't wait till we need the next new high school. We need to be planning for this all along. And she was also extremely inclusive. She wanted diverse viewpoints. She wanted people from different backgrounds. She wanted to be sure that she was hearing every voice, including student voice, to say, what do we need? And so when the town and the Blue Ribbon Committee and the groups decided, yes, we are going to build a brand new high school, she really had the vision to say, Wando is a powerhouse. I mean, nobody can dispute that. Fantastic educational, opportunity there at Wando. But how can we take and build off of what Wando has done so well and make something more for our community, not in place of, not in competition with, but really as a partner in our community. And our town said very loudly, we're ready. We can support a new high school. I used to tell people all the time, Mount Pleasant's got enough love for everybody. They really do. We've also had tremendous growth. And so I've always felt for Wando, their greatest strength with the diversity of classes is also one of the biggest constraints, I think, with the size in being able to do that. So we talked over and over again about how can we complement Wando? How can Wando complement Beckham? What can we do? Let's replicate the very best things that Wando is doing, but then also how do we differentiate ourselves? How do we add those other programs that are going to give our students more opportunities? And through the Center for Advanced Studies and by sharing that facility there on the Wando campus, I think we finally hit the sweet spot to be able to say, okay, we'll offer this. Wando's also offering this, but then students can go to the Center for Advanced Studies to get the more advanced levels for those programs. Yes.
Right. Yeah. That's great. That's it was in our conversations early on. It was a concern about if how the community could support two schools, but during even the design and before the construction even started, when you were named as the principal of Beckham High School, you got right on it, and you
I
just
felt like
started.
we had to.
You just started planning. You started. I mean, I feel like you had Chick-fil-A events too, just to learn about Beckham.
Right.
And you did a wonderful job at preparing the community and getting the word out.
Right.
And I feel like that's likely what Miss Beckham would have done herself.
And constantly, I always say, I feel like I have Lucy sitting on one shoulder, saying, no, I would say, wonder how Miss Beckham would have done this. What would Lucy have done with this? And I think getting out into the community, going out, talking to people, I do think I had a bit of an advantage having been principal at Moultrie. So I knew a lot of people in the community and felt like I had a really strong relationship with them. And I said, we can do this, guys. Come on.
Right.
We did this at Moultrie. We know how wonderful Wando is. Let's make Beckham just the best of both worlds.
Right. That's great.
Had a lot of buy-in with that. Plus, we have an extremely supportive community. They saw this as an opportunity.
Right.
We've had a really interesting uptick in the number of people that are coming back from charter schools and private schools, and really seeing Beckham as an option for their students. Whereas, maybe they thought Wando was too big, or they felt like they needed to be in a private setting or a smaller setting, but they're coming back.
That's great. That's great to hear. So I'd like to segue into now that more students are coming back, and you're opening up with an 11th grade this year. So, and we are still mitigating the pandemic and the coronavirus. So how are you preparing for this year, the second year? I mean, what have you changed from last year?
One of the things that I said about last year was it was kind of like a grand dress rehearsal. It went really well. I think we did a really good job. I think we've got a lot of things in place. One of the things that was kind of the silver lining in the pandemic cloud was that it allowed us to fail forward, to say, that didn't work. We're going to do this differently. So we've adjusted protocols, processes, procedures, that kind of thing. What works, what doesn't work. And now to have probably over 1,200 students that are going to be coming into our building, we feel like we've got some of the basics worked out, but we're really thinking forward into what's the building going to be like with that many students here. Right. So by the end of the school year this past year, we had almost 95% of our students back. Wow. So we've seen the building with 700 to 800 people, in the space, but to have almost twice that many, back, it's going to be really interesting. We have I feel like we've done a really great job with our 9th and 10th graders that will now be our 10th and 11th graders. They know our processes, they know our procedures, so we're putting orientations into place. We've got Back to Beckham later this week where parents are going to be able to come in, students are going to be able to see the space. So we're trying to do a lot of pre-work to really get students ready for coming back. Our teachers, I think they feel a bit freed now that they're not going to have to teach virtually and in person at the same time. I mentioned the plexiglass had been removed, so we were, and there'll be different kinds of things. We'll still be working on spacing and hygiene and, masking if that's what somebody chooses to do. So all of those things will be in place, but I feel like our teachers have their feet wet. We are also adding 40 new staff members.
Oh, wow.
So we're doubling our staff. So we've got to bring them in and try to, let them get acclimated to our
bring
space.
them on board.
Right, exactly. But I think we've got a great foundation.
That's great. I'm so glad to hear that. It's incredible. 40 new staff.
I know. Now, that's not brand new. We did have some people that left and got transferred.
Right.
So, but there are 40 people that are going to be new to us.
Beckham.
Yeah,
that's great.
So it's going to be fun.
That's wonderful. I'm going to ask you a question that I've asked some of our previous guests, only because it always amazes me to speak with educators and who lead teams, especially in times such as these that we've had in the past year. How do you recharge to face every day, to be that positive voice, to lead your staff, to make sure they are engaged and have what they need to engage their students? Do you do anything personally to recharge, or
well,
is there anything
I
particular?
tell people all the time, I get my energy from people. I'm very much an extrovert. So usually now, of course, I love to go to the beach and hide in my backyard and do all those things, read and all those things that you have to do to kind of recenter.
Right.
But my students and my faculty, I feel like recharge me. So
Right.
when somebody calls and they're like, well, I've got this problem, and I'm like, let me see if I can help you. So any opportunity that I have to help a parent, like to say, my own son is about to graduate from college, and I can look back and say, well, I understand exactly how you feel because he really struggled with that too. And to be
Right.
able to give some of that advice. So I feel like I get my energy from people and from being able to help people, which is they in turn help me. So
Right.
it's kind of, it's that reciprocal relationship. But at the same time, I think just being around people recharges me. I also think that we have to constantly, or I have to constantly remind people when things get really chaotic, that's when we have to lean on each other. We have to be able to realize that maybe I'm not going to say the right thing, or maybe I'm not going to be at my best for that
Right.
particular day, but I know that my assistant principals are, or my instructional coach, or I can lean down to a teacher and say, I've got a couple of staff members that were former administrators, and I can say, I'm really struggling with this.
Right.
What do you think? And have those critical thought partners. So we're a very open staff, a very collegial staff. I try to do that with my students as well. I've said to a student before, you know what? I didn't give you the best answer. I realized that didn't make you very happy. Let me see if we can help you figure out a better solution to whatever it is that's going on.
Right.
Or a student that challenged me on the dress code. Ms. Dowsing, why do you say this about this particular type of dress, but you don't say something about this type of dress? And I'm like, you know what? That's a good point. I hadn't thought about that. Thank you for trusting me enough to be able to say, hey,
Right.
have you thought about this? So I think that open communication, that open dialogue, that trust and that relationship with people is what keeps me going.
That's great. That's great. I love to hear that, because for you to present that open-minded and approachable demeanor really really means that you reach people on a personal level, I
hope
think.
so.
And so when you were talking about that, it made me think you've been in education for many years.
Long time.
And I want, because I'm the mother of younger children too, what do you see are the biggest challenges facing our young folks today? Because, the challenges have been even various during the time you have been an educator, and different from the time, we were coming up through school.
Well, I think being a teenager is hard. It always has been hard. They don't call it teenage angst for nothing. I think adolescence and pre-adolescence is a really emotional, charged time for children. They're trying to figure out not only who they are, but where they belong in the world, and how they're going to make an impact. And
And our world has been changing.
oh
a
my gosh,
lot.
and especially in the last couple of years.
Yes.
And of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention social media and the effects of technology and all the positive things that can bring, but also the negative things that it can bring with preoccupation of that, or feeling like, the added stresses that teenagers often have.
Right.
I can't imagine what it would have been like to have constant Snapchats, TikToks, all the different social media things, for all the good things that they can do. They cause a lot of, stress and anxiety for students. And so one of the things that we've been trying to do here at Beckham is to really build those relationships with our students. And we also have a program called CREW, which is creating relationships and exploring within, that helps them navigate what's it like to be a person, a teenager, a young person in this crazy world that we're living in, through a pandemic, through a lot of the social unrest and different things that have been going on in our country with politics, or, whether it's climate change, or, something flooding in
Events.
downtown Charleston, whatever it happens to be, or if it's just, taking down the water tower in Mount Pleasant. There was like a big controversy about that. Should it stay? Should it go? But giving our students the opportunity and the place to be able to talk about that has been super important. So I think you mentioned just, what are our teenagers? I think as adults, we just have to be there for them, support them, realize that what they're going through are the exact same things that we went through. They just have different, criteria and different things that are causing those different areas. So I think just being there for kids and continuing to support them to be independent young people is just super important.
And everything that you've described is empathy to me, and fostering fostering not only an individual empathy, but a communal empathy,
Exactly.
which I think is so important in today's world. And I don't know that we use that word when I was growing up,
Yeah.
but I think that it's a paramount notion that has become
Yes.
increasingly important in how we
100%.
help each other
right,
navigate
exactly,
the
and take
world.
care of each other.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
So in closing, I want to talk a little bit about lessons learned.
Okay.
Because now that you've been in the building for a year, you know, it was a 6-year or 5-year planning process. What has been good? What has been bad? What would you change? What would you do differently if you had to do it again? Would you do it again?
Oh yes, in a heartbeat. In fact, we jokingly, I told my bookkeeper secretary confidant, I told her, I said, Margie, when we do this again, and she laughed at me. She said, again, when are we doing this again? She's like, this is my last time. I'm retiring after this. And I was like, no, you're not. We're gonna do this again. I think one of the things that we would definitely do again is focus on the climate, focus on the culture. The building is gorgeous. You all are professionals. You've done an amazing job designing and constructing and doing all of the things. You made the shell. And I think what was inside the building and is as important, if not more so.
Absolutely.
And so I think really focusing on what's going to happen inside the building, because we even talked, there for like 5 minutes, everybody was like, are we going to open on time? Or, that kind of stuff. And like, even if we had opened, we actually started at Moultrie Middle School and had an office there.
Right.
We were becoming Beckham there. It didn't have anything to do with the building. Of course, we wanted the building, but
it was the spirit
about
building the spirit within the building.
Exactly, 100%. So making sure, I think really focusing on what's happening in the building, focusing on the people, hiring the best, getting out of their way, letting them teach. They know how to teach. They know how to help students learn. And then really focusing on that climate with students and bringing them and making them feel comfortable. High school's hard, whether we're going to a big high school or a little high school, just coming to high school is hard. So I think really focusing on the people would be the biggest lesson, because you do tend to get stressed out because you don't have this color paint or that color paint, or they don't have this finish or that finish or whatever it happens to be. But that's why I think CCSD has done an amazing job. They have a procurement team and capital and facilities and all the different people that really helped us with all those gory details so that we could focus on building Beckham and becoming what Lucy Beckham High School was going to be.
Right.
But as far as like biggest, I don't know. There are little things that I would tweak here and there. Can never have enough storage, that kind of thing. And really kind of, just every change, it's a domino effect.
Yes.
So you think,
one decision.
I remember saying to you, Michelle, can't we just do this? And you're like, well, that might be a load-bearing wall, or can't move this door here, or there's, guidelines or whatever it happens to be. So I've learned a tremendous amount. I would love the opportunity to do it again because I've learned so much, and I think it would be really fun. I enjoyed the process. I am not planning to do anything. I'm staying here for quite some time. They're going to have to carry me out of here. But it's just been an amazing process, and I would do it again in a heartbeat.
Oh, great.
In a heartbeat.
Well,
it was
I'm glad
great.
to hear it.
It was a lot of fun.
I'm glad to hear
And I look
that.
forward to talking to other people. But we've got several new schools that are coming on board in the county. And so I've already had a couple of people come over and say, oh, what do you like about this? And I'm like, don't do that and do this and make sure you think about that. So that's been a lot of fun.
Right. That's great. That's great. That's wonderful. And, too, every community is slightly different, but I feel like the way you have approached building the culture at Beckham has been really unique because you are dialed in to the community here. And I hope that you found success.
Oh, 100%. I'm definitely in my dream job, and I wouldn't be anyplace else.
Oh, great. Great, Anna. Well, thank you so much for sitting down with me.
This was awesome. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I could talk about Beckham all day.
Oh, well, and that's great for any of our listeners who may be interested in visiting Beckham High School.
Yeah, come on over anytime. We'd love to show you around.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you again, Anna.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
Idea Exchange, the Future of K-12 Education podcast series is brought to you by McMillan Paston Smith. The K-12 studio at McMillan Paston Smith is focused on helping schools prepare future-ready students. Have a question or a topic you'd like to address? Please complete the contact form listed in the episode description.
Thanks for tuning in to Idea Exchange, the Future of K-12 Education series. Remember to subscribe so you don't miss our next episode.